the honor to be here to speak to you about cinema and social responsibility. Two very important statements have been made before me, and I would like to take up some of the questions raised. See, I come from a very different background in the sense that I was not a filmmaker, although I studied film, but I was always a writer and a commentator on cinema, unlike Neela Banda or Pavan Verma, who's not been writing on cinema, but has a great sense of social responsibility in life itself. And I admire that very much, which a lot of us are not willing to take up that kind of social responsibility. But I've been writing on cinema for very many years. The only thing that never interested me was Bollywood. It's quite astonishing, but that kind of cinema I was never interested in after the cinema made in the 60s, because the cinema of that period was great cinema. It was entertaining, it was thought-provoking, it was sensitive, it was beautifully done. And I want to say that I think cinema has a huge social responsibility, whether you like it or not, whether you're willing to admit it or not. Most filmmakers who are now making films in Bollywood don't even think like that. And that is partly because of the system that we have put in place, because the ones who control the kind of film that will be released in the cinemas are the distributors, not even the financiers and producers. So if the distributor says, I don't want to show this film in my theater because I'm not going to make enough money, the investor and the producer can't do very much. Is that right, Neela? And that there are so many impositions on the filmmaker, so many demands, so many curtailments on what he can or she can do or not do, that it is extremely difficult. And therefore, I think someone like Amir Khan, who in his very entertaining films, whether he's an actor or director or producer or whatever, always manages to bring in a message. Now that to me is a very, very important way of handling the situation, because whether you like it or not, the influence of cinema is colossal, and nobody denies that, particularly in India, because people do get influenced by it. I think one of the reasons why either it influences what people are doing or is influenced by what is happening around you, which is also an important point to remember, because even the filmmakers are living in this world. They see the world around them, and therefore what they put into their films is also what they see around them. So if you talk of violence and gundaism and corruption, all which induce violence as well, it's all around you. So then it comes into the films as well. But we've never really taken, and there are so many things to say, I don't know where to go. In India, we've never taken cinema seriously. The powers that be, right from the beginning of cinema, never took it seriously as a form of influencing people, which is done right from the beginning, and therefore give the thinking filmmaker a chance to make films. It was not possible. Only in the 50s and 60s, when the studio system was there and run by people who were thinking people, who were looking at cinema as a form of art and a form of entertainment and wanting to combine the two, it was possible. After that ended, it was over. Then it was just money that ruled the roost. But I do want to just come back to the concept of cinema as social responsibility. You know, it can really change your life, your attitudes and your behavior in life in an enormous way. It can turn, when the cinema is really good, I would rather talk about cinema in general in the world. It opens your eyes to things that you never seen. It takes you to places you will not go to. I would rather look at international cinema, and Asia particularly, which I've now been concentrating on over many years. It opened Asia for me. I did not, when I first saw films from Asia, I thought, what am I doing with my French background? Years in France, French cinema was the best, the greatest. It still is. But when I started seeing films from Asia, my whole attitude towards cinema and life, in a sense, began to undergo a change, because I saw places, I visited places, I met people on the screen that you cannot meet in your lifetime, and you begin to see the world in a way that it takes you out of the world that you live in into larger places, and it turns strangers into friends. That's a very important point. It was the motto of a festival where I first saw Asian cinema, and it stayed with me ever since, because when I saw films from Hungary, I said, what is Hungary? I'm talking of 30, 40 years ago. But through seeing films, I began to understand the country. I wanted to visit it, wanted to know, to learn it. I learned its history. I knew what it was. But similarly, that happened with the films from all over Asia over the years. And therefore, cinema can have a profound effect on you. I don't know if we are wanting to talk today only about Indian cinema, or I would like to talk about cinema as a whole, of what it can do to you, what it can bring to you. Now, it brought the world to me, and I discovered the world through the cinema, and that is a lesson I will stay with me all my life. But if you come back to Indian cinema, when the new wave began in the late 1969, if you like, with Mrinal Sen's film, and then the early 70s with the films made by the graduates of cinema, you saw it became a huge divide between the popular and the art cinema, which really should not be there. But because the people making the art cinema came from studying cinema, going to film school in Pune, it changed a lot of things, because they started to look at what cinema can do and say, and they did not want just entertainment. They wanted to make people think, and they made the kind of films that stay with you, that you do think about. And that, to some extent, is continuing with a very few people like Neela Panda, and there are now younger filmmakers coming up also who are using the cinema to express ideas and to make people think about what they're looking at and change the way you look at the world, or they're expressing how they see the world, and that affects it. But the other effect it had was when the graduates of the film school went into, if you like, commercial cinema, the technical standards improved hugely, and the people making the popular film also began to look more seriously at technical aspects. All that is not social responsibility like Pavan Verma was talking about, but it is to some extent, because earlier films were made in such appalling taste, such bad costumes, such bad setups, but slowly it did change, and therefore your own aesthetic appreciation, the way you watched a dance on a Bollywood film was different to the way you watched it pre this transformation that did take place. But what cinema? I just want to end with I'm coming back to Amir Khan a bit, because in the very popular films, huge box office successes that he's been involved with, there has always been a very strong message which has stayed with people, which do make people think. And just talk, there's Lagan, for example, which is a film I really enjoyed very much. There's one moment when there's the Raja who's watching the match, and he wants to encourage the Indian team, but all around him are the British. And it's a British Raj, and he gets up to cheer for the Indian team and he curtails himself. To me, that was a hugely poignant moment that made me realize what people suffered through that whole era of colonization. I mean, I can go on like this for another hour, but I know I've been given the yellow rose, so I must stop. But I hope we can discuss some of these things later. Thank you.